Okay, good evening, wherever you're joining me from. Welcome to today's live stream session. And Today's the 1st of December, year 2020. And I'm going to be starting some set of live streaming starting from today. Today is the very first edition. And kindly drop your name and your location in the chat room wherever you're joining me from. So today I'm going to be talking about the brand called You. The brand called You. I'm going to be talking about how to stand out in your career. About 10 years ago, I came across something very interesting. That was the article written by Tom Peters in the Fast Company. And he spoke about the brand called You, talking about how businesses and organizations understand the power of brand and how that is expected to be let me use the word now transferred to taking yourself as a brand. You are the CEO of You Incorporated. So, how does the concept of personal branding affect your career? How does it affect what people say about you? All of this we're going to be doing in the next couple of minutes. So, I'm going to be sharing uh, my slide right about now. So Inkem, welcome. Inkem is joining us from Lagos. Inkem is in the room already. Now, the brand called You. That's the conversation that we're going to be having this evening. The brand called You. So when we're talking about the concept of personal brand, Tom Peters, in his 1997 article in Fast Company, said big companies understand the importance of brand. So today, in the age of the individual, you have to be your own brand, meaning you need to understand what makes Nike Nike, what makes Coca-Cola Coca-Cola. Why would you choose to drive a Porsche or a Mercedes or a Camry or a Toyota? All of those are brands in themselves. Now, when you transfer that conversation to yourself, how would you take yourself as a personal brand in relation to your career? Now, you must recognize the fact that everyone has developed a reputation over time. When you walk into a room, what do people say about you? Or if I ask your friends about you, what would they say? Would they say, oh, Shegun is a nice guy? Oh, Shegun is so no, Shegun is dubious. Now, all of those are talking about reputation. Unconsciously, we are building our brand, whether consciously or unconsciously. Often it is your personal brand that is projected when you meet people for the very first time. Remember, the impression of first impression will last longer. Meaning, when I enter into the room, from the point of my entering into the room, everybody is checking me out. They are trying to know what's peculiar, what's different about this person. So what it means is that it's your personal brand that you project when you meet people for the very first time, and it means that they very quickly develop an impression of you. When you enter into the room, people develop an impression, and that impression, directly or indirectly, is adding to your personal brand. So if I ask you that, we live in the world of perception. It's not the reality that people look at. It's perception. Perception is reality. So when I see you dress shabbily, there's a possibility that I will judge you by the way you are dressed. Meaning, we're in a world of perception, and you are the one that would decide how others will perceive you. You are decide what others say about you. Most importantly, we're in the internet age, so you're going to decide what Google says about you by the things you push out. So we're going to be looking at both online and offline representation of yourself vis-a-vis the kind of perception that you want people to have about you. So let me ask you a quick question. If I Google your name now, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to do this exercise. So if I Google your name right away, what would Google say about you? So I'm going to take a pause now, and I'm going to do a quick I'm going to open a fresh page now, and I'm going to try to do a quick Google search to know what exactly would Google say about you. So let me do this. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to do a quick share, and I'm going to share a Google page, and I'm going to ask that quick question that if I do a quick search now, so take for example, this is me trying to search for Segun Akiode now, and let's see what the result is going to look like within Google. Now, interestingly, 24,300 result in 0.42 seconds. That was very fast. And what are the results that Google has to say about me at the moment? So the very first result that is coming up on my Google chart is my LinkedIn page. That's something I created. Then my website, I have a website, sheguakiode.com. Then you see my Twitter account. Then you see my YouTube channel. Interestingly, and Facebook, this is actually my Facebook page. Now, you would notice that for everything, then my Instagram account, then Stitcher, then SlideShare, then this is also a podcast channel where my podcast is syndicated into. That's page one. Everything you're seeing on my page one was consciously designed by me. How do I mean? About 10 years ago, I decided to consciously decide what Google will say about me as part of my personal brand. Now, you would notice one thing that is very peculiar here is the fact that look at what my LinkedIn page is saying about me. Segun Akiode is a born teacher. That's something I put into my LinkedIn page. Look at my website, personal website. Segun Akiode is a born teacher. Now, every single place you're going to, look at my YouTube. Segun Akiode is a born teacher, chemical engineer turned strategic HR professional. You would notice even up to my Facebook page, not my profile, the Facebook page coming up were created by me. Now, what you would notice very interestingly is that each of this conversation is consistent, meaning I personally took charge of what I want Google to say about me. So if I take a pause now and I ask you this quick question, what would Google say about you? Welcome, Benjo, welcome, Ajayi, welcome. That's we call him Kabod. Welcome. So I know you're the one. Inkem, welcome also to the live stream. Welcome everybody. So if I ask you that quick question, if I Google your name, what would Google say about you? What would your response be? I just did an experiment about me. What would Google say about you if I'm to Google your name at this time? We're in the world of perception, meaning we need to decide what exactly Google says about us, even in this age and time. Bello, Omowumi, welcome to the stream. So I'm going to dive into the conversation again around what is personal branding. Then once I'm done with that, then I'll be able to take questions based on questions that we're most likely going to have to be able to ask me even at this time. So the conversation is that if I Google your name right away, what would Google say about you? So you need to be in control of what Google is going to say about you. So when we're talking about the concept of personal branding, you need to recognize that personal branding is the process that takes your skills, your personality, and unique characteristics and packages that characteristics into a powerful identity that lift you above the sea of anonymous faces and competitors. So if I break down that definition, there's the aspect of you understanding what makes you different from other individuals. Remember, the brand called you standing out, how to stand out in your career. What is unique about you? So if anybody's to talk about myself, Segun Akiode, that word Segun Akiode is a born teacher is me trying to project my personality. What makes me different from every other individual? There's something unique about you that is even useful when you go for interviews, even when you go for networking event. There's something unique about you that you need to project. The ability to now create that into a powerful identity that now stands you out from the sea of anonymous faces. So if you enter into the room, what will people say about you? So if I mention a few names, if I mention Otedola, you understand what comes to your mind. If I mention Dangote, you understand what comes to your mind. But if I mention Jimmy Agbaje, what comes to your mind is the political person. Now, meaning each individual that I'm mentioning at this time has a certain perception. So, what that means about you is that you need to understand what makes you different. So, your personal brand is the powerful and clear idea that comes to mind whenever people think about you. So when somebody says, when I mention Sheg, what comes to your mind? When I mention Tolu, if that's your name, what comes to your mind? When I mention Benjo, what comes to your mind? That is talking about your personal brand. Unconsciously, we're actually determining that personal brand. If therefore that personal brand would either be positive or negative, you need to decide how that personal brand is going to come across to any individual, because that is your responsibility. Then what are the key features if I'm to look at what it takes to build a personal brand? Number one is that personal branding is about discovering your unique identity first. Who are you? It's a journey of self-discovery. So when I said I'm a born teacher, it's me, describing myself. So if you were to do the same thing, how would you describe yourself? It means you need to go through a journey of self-discovery, something that makes you unique. That's the first thing you need to recognize. Secondly, is that it is your unique identity that differentiates you from every other individual. You are unique and you are who you are. You are not any other person. You can't mimic people. You can't fake it until you make it. You are different. It's your personal, your uniqueness that you're going to communicate even to others. You have to internalize that your uniqueness. So when I say I'm a born teacher, it's me internalizing who I am. There was a certain time I got into an argument with somebody, and the person was saying, "You're always teaching, you're always teaching." And I said, "Sorry, I can't help it. That's me. I don't even know how I do it. It comes naturally to me. That's me embracing who I am and projecting it even to every individual." Then the third part is that it is your unique identity that must be projected in a positive light. So if you want to be projected as somebody that is competent in whatever field that you are part of, then it's you projecting it. So I say this: I am not the only chemical engineer that has become an HR professional. As a matter of fact, when I introduce myself as I'm a chemical engineer turned strategic HR professional, 1,001 other people now say, "Are you serious? You're already read chemical engineering?" Simply, they start to associate with me. But one thing that have been common is that I have projected that part of me. So I'm not the only one that does compensation and benefit. I'm not the only total rewards person. I'm not the only HR analytics person. But most of the time, because I have taken a conscious effort to project that part of me, I notice that people tend to associate themselves more with me than any other individual, simply because I have projected that even across. Then finally, the three-step approach is: one, you need to consciously decide what your personal brand message is going to be. I'm not going to decide that for you. You are going to decide. Then, two, you now need to create both an online version, which can be in form of your CV, or as an offline version, your resume as an offline version, your profile as an offline version, or the online part of it, your social media account. Is there a level of consistency, which is the third part? You need to ensure consistency. So when I Googled my name earlier on, Shegun Akeode, I'm going to show you the result again. You would see consistency across those channels. I have all my social media channel. I use my first name and my second name simply because I want to be consistent across all the channels. And I consciously communicate a certain consistent message across, which is the critical part of the conversation. So, yeah, which is the first critical part of the conversation. So I'm looking through the chat room now. Okay, Jam, you're welcome. Jam is in the house. Welcome. I needed to give you Twali, basically. So You're welcome to the room. Okay, Abraham is here. Welcome. So I'm going to be taking questions for the next 5-10 minutes. If you have questions, kindly drop them in the chat room right about now so that I would be able to pick the questions that come across right about now. So if you have a question around personal branding, how do you stand out in your career? Now is the time where you can drop your questions in the chat room and I would be able to pick the questions as they come across. So Shaye, welcome. You're welcome from Lagos. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So questions, I'm checking through the chat room now. Is there a question that we have? So Mudrotoluwa Ajayi is saying HR shape is in. I didn't get that. HR shaping or go extinct. Okay, I get that now. So it's very critical that you need to stand out as a personal brand. So I'm checking through the chat room. You have questions. How do you? Okay, so I'm picking the first question from Mudro Toluwa Ajayi. How do young HR professionals build their branding once they discover themselves? It's a three-pronged approach. Discovering yourself is the first thing. Then, secondly, how do you project? The definition of personal branding we say is discovering your unique personality, skills, and strength, then projecting it. That's the projection part. So, the projection part in this world of online account and online medium, the world is your oyster. So let me show you a typical example. So I did a quick search earlier on of my name on Google. And interestingly, is that every single thing you see on my channel were things I decided consciously. There were questions I've decided constantly. From the point of your LinkedIn account, you need to brand it in a certain way. The kind of pictures you use is very critical. The kind of things you project. So I started off from blogging, started to communicate. I used to write for Jobberman many years ago. I wrote for Ventures Africa at the time, and I was writing things around career development. I was writing things around job search. That was me trying to pass a certain type of message across. So as a young HR professional, if you want to build, you want to pass a certain message to people, you need to decide what that message is going to look like. Then across your channels, you need to decide consistency, the names that you use. I know in this age and time, many people want to write some things online that they don't want someone else to get to know about. So it's your choice. But the most important part is you communicating a consistent message around your competency area. Do you want to be known as a social media strategist? Then you write things around social media. You don't necessarily need to write your own content. Share other people's content. So if we talk about Workplace with Jam, for example, yes, Jam is my person. If you talk about Workplace with Jam, you will notice a consistent message that she shares on IG Live. And everything is consistent around being the best person in the workplace. Then when she became certified as an emotional intelligence, become certified specialist, you would notice that you now start to see the communication. It's unique. So if I talk about Workplace with Jam, the very first thing that comes to my mind is emotional intelligence, is workplace tips. That's our branding ourselves in a certain way. So if you as a young HR professional need to brand yourself, you need to communicate a certain message that people would know you about. Okay. So Jam is asking a question. How do you explain to people that branding you isn't being proud? Okay. So it's not about being proud. It's about sharing your awesomeness with the world. It's about blowing your own trumpet without being proud. So let me take, for example, I mentioned I'm not the only total reward strategist in Nigeria. I'm not the only one that does total rewards. I've had I've come across a lot of people. Total rewards individuals are not well known in HR. And the reason why they are not known is that they are always quiet. But I choose a different approach by projecting myself. And as a result, I've lost count of circles that my name show up as the person to go for compensation and benefit, simply because I've been a little bit known than other people. So it's not being proud, it's just you showing your awesomeness. By virtue of people knowing about it, then people recommend you, and you don't know the power of referrals. Now, today we have had cause to recruit for employees that the jobs were not advertised simply by referrals. Imagining if somebody mentions in an HR directors group, I need somebody for compensation and benefit, and three people mentions my name, three different individuals mentions my name out of five names that come up. Who do you think they're going to talk to? They say, this guy's name is recurring, simply because branding is not being proud. Please take notes, is not being proud. So Shaya is asking, what happens when I use different names on my different social media accounts? You need to be consistent with what you use. The name, so if I Google your name, it's the one I Google that will show up. The other ones won't show up. So if I Google Segun Akiode, everything that comes up under Segun Akiode is something I've taken charge of. So it's always better when you have a way to harmonize the names across your social media channels. I don't usually subscribe. If you really want to have a life that is not consistent, so there's this idea around social recruiting. So employers are Googling people's name now. So if you use different channels, they are most likely not. There was a certain time I was checking somebody out on LinkedIn, and the name on LinkedIn was different from the name of the person's CV. So I had to ask, do you have a LinkedIn account? And the person said, yes, I have a LinkedIn account. And I discovered that what was on LinkedIn was different from what was on the CV. So it's always good to be consistent, even with the conversation itself. So Fisaya, I see you. Jumoke is saying, oh, okay, so she's just trying to confirm the question. So Abraham is asking, whilst trying to create a unique brand, how do you remain constant and innovative coming up with content? Okay, content creation is a whole, it's like a whole syllabus on its own. But the consistent part about it is, once you discover your interest areas, content starts to come up. Decide the kind of content you want to create. One thing is taking it a step at a time. So I started out with writing, blogging. Then gradually I get content. One of the various areas where I get content, I read books. So I have an interesting book that has formed most part of the things I write about. It's even part of some of the things I put into my own book, Corporate Misfit, Immutable Career Lessons for Fresh Graduates, is that I tend to read a lot in my field. I'm not an island. I don't know everything. So one of the areas is that you need to read to generate content. I get ideas from books. I get ideas from YouTube. So when I need to write or I need to do a video about a certain area, I will go on YouTube and see what others have been saying about that area. Then I now get inspiration from there. So it means if you really create a content ideas around your interest areas, definitely you'll be able to generate as many content as possible. So I want to quickly go through the questions that are popping up. Okay, so does the organization not affect one's goal towards personal branding? No. Personal branding is your tool. So let me put it this way. I currently run an organization, and I also still do some other things aside Segun Akiode, aside my organization. So there are times when individuals come to me and they say, we want to engage you, Segun. Now, the problem of leaving your personal brand in the hand of your organization is that there are some individuals that work for big brands. They know them, and individuals and employers of labor and recruiters are interested in them because of the big brand, not because of them. So I usually tell individuals, if you are allowing only your organization to push you, you need to build a brand, because when you leave organization A to go to organization B, it's your personal brand people are going to engage with. When they call you for an interview, it's your personal brand they're going to engage with. They're not going to engage with your organization. And there are some times when you look at some people, oh, but he says he's working for this big multinational, but what does he know? He's not, there are times when if you allow your personal brand in the hands of your organization, it's like a recipe for a disaster. Okay, so Abimbala Bimbola is correct. Apologies. Bimbola, sorry, I missed the name out. Sorry. So when I read this particular question earlier on, that was actually a Bimbola's question. I'm surprised. I'm sorry, I missed out that particular name earlier on. So to be innovative for content, you need to look at content ideas. So take for example, I'm talking about personal branding today. I can actually do a 10-part series on personal branding. So from the definition of personal branding I gave earlier, if I start to break it down, I can now start to say, okay, one day devoted to discovering yourself. Second day discovering, creating your online profile, social media, LinkedIn. How do you create it? Then I can get to the point of being consistent across all of those channels. That's just personal branding. If you go on Google, there are lots of information you can give. The part of you deciding on content is work on its own, meaning you must be dedicated to discovering those various areas around the content areas that relates to the brand that you want to push across. So I hope that helps. So Shei is saying, spot on, building your personal brand outside of your organization you work for. Yes, that's very critical. You need to build a personal brand outside of that organization, because when that organization ceases to exist, it is you that will remain. So if I pick Okojo Weala, for example, you would notice she had built a reputation in World Bank before she came to become the finance minister of Nigeria. And when she left, now she's going to the World Trade Organization, and that same personal brand she has built for herself is speaking for her, simply because if she had lived her life with the organization, then maybe the personal brand won't be able to speak. Remember, personal brand is about perception. When you walk into a room, what will people say about you? How would they introduce you? If a friend is to introduce you, that is the effect. So unconsciously, you have a personal brand, whether you consciously take charge of it or not. But the conversation we're having today is you need to consciously take charge of your personal brand, because that is the only way you can stand out in your career. So I'll take this last question before we call it an evening. How can personal branding impact attraction to an organization? Yes, that is what we call, if it's related to the organization, we call it employer branding. So employer branding is more about projecting yourself as an employer of choice. So the reputation. So branding, when it comes to employment branding, it doesn't have to be your fine website, your fine office, and the rest. It talks about the communication that people say about your organization. So when people experience you at the point of the interview, what's the picture you give to them? Do you stay for like 12 hours before you get to be interviewed? You know, some of the things that are circulating on social media today around individuals, you say to come for an interview at 9 a.m. You don't get to see them until 4 p.m. They're speaking about your brand as an organization. You see such individuals. There's a certain telecommunication organization that used to have a reputation for that before you get to a certain level, there's a certain person you must see, and it takes a long period. Yes, there are busy schedule, but if it becomes without a reason, if it starts to become a trend, people start to label your organization. So the personal brand of the organization would go a long way to determine whether somebody will join them or not. If I say a Unilever, everybody wants to work for Unilever simply because it has built a brand for itself. But if I mention Shegun & Co, because you don't know Shegun & Co, you may not want to go and work for Shegun & Co. But when somebody that has worked for Shegun & Co starts to give you testimonials about working with Shegun & Co, definitely you will take it as a place to work, which is very critical when it comes to personal branding. So I think it's about time. If there are no other questions, I would want to bring this particular live stream to a close. Please, if you are yet to subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel, kindly subscribe. Because I'm going to be doing this frequently now. I'm going to be announcing ahead of time. Today was a test where I decided to inform a very few number of people, and I'm glad about 13 individuals are currently watching this live. At the time, it was 15. So I'm going to be doing it this frequently, where I'll dedicate a topic and I'll be able to do a teaching for like 10, 15 minutes and have time also to answer question live, because this is the time where I want to be having one-on-one conversation. And watch out for the next time that we're going to be doing this, because this is going to be frequent going forward. Okay, one more question before we go from Bello or Momi. So can personal branding work without social media? Yes, it can. Social media is just a projection tool. Now, personal branding can also work online, offline. So take, for example, the way I dress is also part of my branding. The way I walk can also become part of my brand. The way I speak can also become part of my brand. Like, take for example, most of the time when I go on my YouTube channel, I try to be on t-shirt, simply because I want to project a casual, approachable look to people. I don't want to be uptight. So if I choose to be on tie all the time, that's me projecting myself in a certain way. If I choose to be casual all the time, that's me projecting myself in a certain way. And if I want to be very official, yes, offline, yes, it's being official. So the way you carry yourself, both online and offline, had to your personal brand. So social media is just an expression of your brand offline. But the brand must first be defined offline before it can be taken online and be consistent, even with the message that you pass across. So, one more question. That question just popped up. Thank you so much for sharing this session. Some SME, okay, charge for it. Okay, yeah, some subject matter expert charge for it. Very true. The whole idea is to make knowledge available. One of the things about me is that I love knowledge sharing. So thank you very much for joining this session today. I will be informing you on when, maybe I will do this once in 2 weeks, thereabouts. That means in the next 2 weeks, I'm most likely going to go live again, but I would inform you for everybody that was part of the session today. Thank you very much for joining me. Remember to click the like button below and turn on the bell notification so that you will know when I'm going live. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. This is Shegun Akiode. Cheers.